Hi guys, it's Mark here. Just want to bring another Bible version verse issue to you today, and it's another video that I've done this evening on Old Testament verse. In this case it's from Proverbs chapter 19 verse 18. I want to read this in the King James Bible and then give you a little bit of an application on that, certainly for me as a parent, and then I'm going to read to you what the new versions say, and all of them get it wrong in one form or another. So let's take a look at this one. So Proverbs 19:18, if you've got your King James Bible to hand, reads as follows: "Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying." Okay, so the key word here, in my opinion, is chasten. Now when you chasten a child, that isn't always a physical punishment. In fact, it often isn't a physical punishment. That may be part of that process. And if you're a parent, you'll understand this as well. So chastening your child can take a number of forms. And I wanted to say this before I read some of the other versions. So for example, with my sons, they're all teenagers now, well beyond any sort of smacking or whatever took place in the old days. But I still chasten my sons, all three of them. I still chasten them. But it's very much like I'm talking to you now. I'll say to them, hey, why did you do that? Or, it'll be more of a question and answer thing, or it'll be some dialogue. Occasionally, I may raise my voice, but it's extremely rare. So my chastening often nowadays, as the father of three teenage boys, is verbal. And it's much like I'm talking now. It's with that authority as a father. But there have been times in the past where I've chastened in other ways. I've shouted. And all parents can relate to this, especially if you had toddlers or difficult children. I've shouted and I have smacked. Any parent that tells you they haven't, I don't even know how they're raising their children. But most of you, I suspect, if your parents watching this, you've done that. Don't be afraid of saying that or admitting it. There's nothing wrong with it. But this is what I mean. Chastening can take a whole variety of forms. And as I said, nowadays the application for me is it's verbal. It's verbal. And it isn't a punishment. It's rarely any form of punishment of any description, really. It's that kind of almost like that embarrassment of being chastened by your dad, not in public, just like, I shouldn't have done that and my dad's noticed, and so on and so forth. It's that kind of thing. So chastening, it's so broad. It's a very broad meaning. It's a very broad meaning, and anybody who knows the word chasten will know that it's broad. And you'll see also from these other versions, the second part of the sentence, "and let not thy soul spare for his crying." Now what, in my opinion, what this is really saying is that you need to sort of keep going. You need to see it through to its conclusion. Because when a child cries, often it melts the hearts of the parents, whether they're disciplining or whether there's some other issue. And what it's really trying to exhort you to do there, in a kind of broad application, I'm aware of where this verse sits in with the Proverbs full stop, but in a broad application, what it's saying is you need to see this through to conclusion. Don't be put off by this kind of distraction that you should stop or whatever it is. And again, it's not that you're beating your child to death and he's crying and just carry on. We're talking about chastening. So if a child gets a bit tearful and all the rest, you still have to see it through. And again, need to make real emphasis on this, that we're not talking about deep physical punishment and discipline. We're not talking about that. We're talking about chastening, and you need to see it through to conclusion. I've had conversations with my teenage boys that they've been, a little bit upset by the chastening, but nothing like, it's not a severe kind of punishment. They've got a little bit sort of tearful, but you then continue on to explain about that, and it's very rare that this happens, but I'm just trying to give you an example of that verse in action, and really to understand this verse just generally as well. And I hope that makes some sense. And again, if you're a father, you will understand this completely. And if you don't do it this way, I recommend that you should. Chastening is it's such a broad topic. So let's take a quick look at some of the other versions. So just bear in mind, I'll just read that again, and just bear that in mind when I read through these other ones. So again, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Okay, so it reads really well, really easy. The application outside of this is perfectly relevant and true, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so if we read some of these other versions, you'll see what's wrong with them straight away. Okay, so the New International Version, again, the most popular Bible out there, easily, reads, discipline your children, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to their death. You couldn't have a more different sounding verse if you tried. Discipline your children. It's almost... that's quite specific to me. When I quote-unquote discipline my children, or have disciplined my children in the past now, that was a physical thing. You know, that was a smack on the backside. That was physical. That was physical. So it says here, discipline your children. So it's talking about physical discipline here, I believe. But the problem I really have with this is that it says, do not be a willing party to their death. That doesn't even compare to the second part of Proverbs 19:18 in the King James Bible. It doesn't even compare at all. And I actually got a clue from this, bizarrely enough, from the New King James Version. And again, it does whatever it always does, it puts a footnote, but this actually mentions something about this. And it said here, from a literal translation from these scholars, literally to put him to death. And then it says, a Jewish tradition reads on his crying. Now, I don't profess to know, excuse me, the background for this. And I actually don't care to know, because I have the right reading right in front of me. So whether it's a Jewish tradition, I have no idea. But I know what it says, and I know that this is the inspired word of God. And I know it's right, because it reads right, and it makes sense, and it's not moronic. You know, this is the right way for it to be read. You know, you don't have to know all of these things to understand that. And I don't know a lot about Jewish traditions. But this, for me, this was a clue as to the mentality of these modern Bible translators and what they do. And obviously they know everything, and they're better than you know, the inspired translation of the King James Bible. So again, I'll read some slightly different translations. Well, if we go back, actually, to the New King James, this one's interesting as well. It says, chasten your son while there is hope. So it maintains the integrity of the first part of that verse. However, it says after that, and do not set your heart on his destruction. I mean, what do they... The implication for me there, do not set your heart on his destruction. You know, it strikes me as a kind of physical thing, really. That's how it comes across to me. You know, his sort of physical ruination, really. I mean, you could argue that it's spiritual, but again, where is the let not thy soul spare for his crying? Where's that exhortation for you to see that chastening through to its conclusion? You know, it just doesn't read right. And if you read that as an unsaved man, or this is your first Bible, you know, I just don't know what it really is telling you to do. I mean, chasten him to the point that you're going to cause him some real harm. I mean, you know, what's it actually talking about? You know, this is the problem. It creates these questions, whereas when I read it in the King James Bible, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Great. Tells me what I should do, and tells me to see it through to conclusion, and not to be worried or upset or challenged by that process. Couldn't be any clearer. I mean, this one, chasten your son while there is hope, fine, and do not set your heart on his destruction. What sort of destruction? Physical? Spiritual? I mean, what are we talking about here? And this is what I mean, it's just not clear. It's not clear. It's not clear to me. Might be to somebody else, but it certainly isn't clear to me. Again, I'll read you some other translations. New Living Translation. Discipline, again, your children while there is hope. Otherwise you will ruin their lives. So you're supposed to physically smack your children all the time, and if you don't, you're going to ruin their lives. That's how I read it. It's not chastening, and it's not maintaining that through to its end. English Standard Version, discipline your son for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. Much like the New International Version. So we're supposed to discipline our kids according to these physically. That's my understanding of the word discipline. But as long as we're not setting our heart on killing them, it's okay. So we can probably beat them half to death, or break their legs or something. That'll be all right, because we're not going to put our heart on set our heart on putting them to death. New American Standard: discipline your son while there is hope, and do not desire his death. Okay, all right. So I can beat my kids, but not all the way to the grave. Holman Christian Standard Bible: discipline your son while there is hope. Don't be intent on killing him. Well, thanks for putting that there. International Standard Version: discipline your son while there is still hope, but don't set your heart on his destruction. What destruction? Spiritual, physical? I mean, what are we talking about here? At least the others are saying don't kill him. I'll just read a couple more from this other website. Common English Bible, always worth a laugh. Discipline your children while there is hope, but don't plan to kill them. As long as I don't plan to kill them, if I end up killing them, that's okay then. It's my understanding of that verse. Contemporary English Version: correct your children before it's too late. And this is an interesting example. Correct probably isn't too bad. Instead of chasten. Chasten's easily a better word. It's far broader, but correct, you could argue reading that, okay, yeah, I get that, I understand. But then it says, if you don't punish them, you are destroying them. So it's exhorting you to punish them. And what do we associate with punishment? How else are you going to punish them? Most likely physically, or you take something away from them, or so on. And so it's almost telling you to do this. Living Bible, let's have a look at this one. Discipline your son in his early years. And here it says, chasten thy son. It doesn't say early years, or, I still chasten my 19-year-old. So according to this, I should only do it when he's... It doesn't even say what the early years are. So what, when he's 8, 4? I don't know. While there is still hope. If you don't, you will ruin his life. Oh. So I better physically punish him in his early, unspecified years. Otherwise I'm going to ruin his life. Thanks, Living Bible. That helps me immensely. New Century Version: correct your children. You could get away with that. While there is still hope, do not let them destroy themselves. Okay, it doesn't seem to connect necessarily with the previous line. I mean, most of them don't in some respects. So correct your children while there is hope. Wonderful. Do not let them destroy themselves. So, okay, how? What? So by correcting them, they won't destroy them. What? They won't start taking drugs? They won't get saved? I mean, what are we talking about here? New Life Version. This one's an interesting one usually. Now this one is an interesting one, and sadly they've got it wrong. But it's an example of a version that's the only one that I found that's vaguely close to the King James Bible reading. And sadly for them, it says here, punish your son if he needs it while there is hope. Punish. What's punishment? It's typically physical, often taking things away, that kind of thing. They've inserted if he needs it, which existed in none of the other translation, nor the inspired, delivered word in English, the King James Bible. And it says here at the end though, and do not worry about his crying. So at least they vaguely got that one right. But again, let not thy soul spare for his crying. So, I'm not going to read any more because I'm getting close to the end of this video. But again, Proverbs 19:18, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. The application of that is so simple and so beautiful. And it's been butchered in these new versions, guys. You can't read these new versions and make sense of them, because they'll get you to think, well, hang on a second, what can I do? And how does it apply? And how are they going to get destroyed? Are we talking spiritually or physically? It's confusing, guys, and that's exactly what Satan wants. He wants to deliver us a confusing Bible. So anyway, better finish. Time's running out. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, guys. God bless.